love this tree. This is a madrone, one of my favorite types of trees. This forest has quite a few madrones. Has oaks, has Douglas fir, manzanitas, bay laurels, and big leaf maples. Quite a diverse forest here, up in the mountains overlooking the Valley of the Moon. But this type of tree I just love. I love the color in this. So this is one of the majestic oaks of Sugarloaf Ridge State Park. It's just a beautiful tree. Oaks are really important on this landscape, and they have been for thousands of years. The local tribes, the Coast Miwok, the Wapo, and the Southern Pomo, made use of the acorns of all of these oaks for years and years. It was a staple food that was collected, harvested in the fall, ground into the mill, or sometimes stored whole, and it was a nutritious food that could be added to. You could make soups and gruels with it. You could use it to bake bread, and it was just a major staple of local diet for thousands of years. Native people still use acorns today. It's partly a cultural tradition that people want to maintain and make use of. So just one of the many beautiful trees of this park, an oak. So we just took a look at a beautiful majestic oak right over here. And right beside that beautiful oak tree, we have this California bay laurel. Now, I mentioned that the acorns are food for local people. The local people had to get rid of a tannic acid. The acorns are very bitter to taste. If you bite into an acorn, you'll probably spit it out. That's because it has a tannic acid. Local native people discovered thousands of years ago how to leach out the tannic acid, allowing them to safely make use of the acorns. This bay laurel tree is a cousin to the bay that we use as seasoning, the Italian bay. It's one of my favorite trees. These leaves, I love that smell. I know local people, indigenous people, that will sometimes tear up a few leaves, and if they've been stung by an ant or some sort of insect, they'll rub it on it, and it helps deaden the pain. Later in the year, this tree will also have bay nuts. And the bay nuts can be, or were in the past, harvested by native people when times were hard. If the acorns failed for any reason, they could make use of the bay nuts. Now the bay nuts, it's not a preferred food, but you can make use of it as a food. But it had to be cooked, it had to be baked. Otherwise, the acidity of the bay nut was just too much. But you can actually bake it and get rid of a lot of that bitterness. Kind of tastes like coffee. So right here, side by side, we have a beautiful oak and this California bay laurel, two of the nice trees of Sugarloaf Ridge State Park. So here's another California bay laurel, and it's actually, oh, I thought it had a bay nut. That's not a bay nut, that's a plum, because there's a plum right here beside it. Now, the bay laurel is a native tree, like the other bay laurel we saw, and like that majestic oak we saw. It's a native indigenous tree. This plum tree is not. This plum tree is an exotic. It was introduced into this environment just about 100 years ago, when in 1920, the state of California bought this property. And soon after, started growing food up here to feed the wards of the state at what was then called the Sonoma State Home. Now, nearby is a place called Camp Butler. Camp Butler was a Boy Scout camp and a Campfire Girl camp associated with the state home. And the state home planted fruit trees down below. And over the years, the fruit trees have mostly disappeared from down below, but coyotes and birds would eat the plums and they would drop the seeds elsewhere. Probably including this tree right here, probably came from a bird that dropped the plum seed. And all these years later, we have a beautiful tree. And I'm going to actually sample one. Too early. Too green, but when this thing is ripe, it'll be so good. But it's not ready yet. So, we're still looking at trees. Today we're at Jack London State Historic Park. And here's a beautiful walnut tree planted by Jack London himself. We're walking down the trail to the Wolf House, and we just stopped to appreciate this tree. It's not a native. It didn't grow in California originally. It was brought here. This particular one, again, was planted by the great American writer Jack London, and it's got quite a few walnuts coming on it this year. So this is a California buckeye. It's a very common tree in California. The native people here used the buckeyes to stupefy fish. They'd mash them up and put them in still pools of water in the creeks and rivers, and it would temporarily knock out the fish and they could be harvested. It's not an easy food to eat for people, but native people did eat buckeyes when it was necessary. But it took a lot to get the acidity out. It took a lot of immersion in water. Often they would bury the buckeyes in mud beside a creek and go off and come back a month later, 2 months later. But this is California buckeye. So this is a manzanita. It's a typical plant of the California chaparral area in Northern California. And it's actually starting to produce berries. Later this year, when the berries are ripe, the birds will come in and start eating these, and the birds love manzanita berries. Actually, they sometimes get drunk on them and make a lot of noise, make a lot of mess. But one of the prettier trees of California, or shrubs, manzanita. Jack London chose a site for the wolf house that had a lot of natural resources, including these redwood trees. He actually felled several of the redwood trees for construction material for the wolf house. Also, this hillside is covered with Sonoma volcanic rock, basalts, former lava rocks, and he used those rocks to build the wolf house as well. But look at these beautiful redwoods. Some of these trees you find stumps, and you know that these were the trees that Jack London had cut for the wolf house.
Hello, my name is Jon Parkman, the director of this film. I wanted to tell the story of some of my favorite trees because I think that there are few things as important as our forests. In an age of deforestation and global climate change, we need to do all we can to protect our forests. The trees are our friends. They provide for us and help to sustain the biological diversity necessary for a healthy planet. I hope you enjoyed my film. If you did, go outside and appreciate nature.